Okay, so in this video we are going to talk about the concept of average speed. If you imagine you're driving to school or driving to, get some food or something like that, you probably run into a bunch of stop signs. Okay, so in other words, during a normal course of your day or your journey, you don't travel at a constant velocity the entire time. And so one way to do calculations, even if you don't have a constant velocity, is to use the concept of average speed. Okay, now the way you calculate average speed is like this. I'm going to write the formula down. Okay, I'm going to write S for speed. Okay, I'm going to use a subscript AVG, that means average, so this is average speed. And the way we're going to do this calculation is I'm going to write D total divided by T total. Okay, so this is average speed, and this is the total distance divided by the total time, and that's how you calculate average speed. Okay, so typically you're asked to find average speed in situations where you don't necessarily have constant velocity, like if you have a trip that has multiple segments, as we'll see in the examples. Now, usually the symbol for speed is an S, and you typically measure that in meters per second, but when you're doing average speed problems, you often see questions involving like kilometers per hour or miles per hour, so don't be surprised by that. Now, when I write D total, what I mean is that's the total distance. And so if you have a situation with multiple distances, you have to add up all the distances. Okay, and when we do some examples, you'll see what that means. Just like with T total, that means the total time. Usually you would be given 2 or 3 different times, you would have to add up all the times, and then you would divide after you add all of those up. Okay, so that's how you calculate average speed. It's the total distance divided by the total time. And we're going to use this equation to do the next few examples, so make sure you have that written down somewhere. Okay, so pause it here if you need to. Okay, so I'm going to erase this equation, and let's just do 3 quick examples. Okay, now the first example is very basic. Okay, so this is example 1. And example 1 says, imagine you going from Ranch Street High School to Stanford Stadium. Okay, that's about 6.9 kilometers. And it says you travel 6.9 kilometers in 0.15 hours. And it's asking what is your average speed. Now, again, it says average because when you go from Ranch Street to Stanford, you don't necessarily travel at a constant velocity because you have to start and stop, at red lights or stop signs, or sometimes you're driving faster, sometimes you're driving slower, but this is just asking about the average. Okay, so the average speed, that's S average, is equal to the total distance divided by the total time. Now in this case, looking at units, I only have one distance, 6.9 kilometers. Okay, so that's one of my givens, 6.9 kilometers. So for total distance, D total, I'm just going to write down 6.9 divided by 0.15 hours. This is another given. This is time, because time is measured in hours. So that's going to be my total time. Okay, now normally I would add up the distances and add up the times and divide, but here I only have one distance and one time. Okay, so in my calculator, what I do is I type in 6.9 divided by, let me fix that. It should be 0.15, not 1.5. Sorry about that. Okay, so I do 6.9 divided by 0.15, and I get 46. And then the unit for that, because I am doing kilometers divided by hours, that's going to be 46 kilometers per hour. And that's going to be my average speed. Okay, so that's just a very basic average speed calculation. Okay, so pause it there if you need to look at that, and we'll do 2 more examples. Okay, so now I'm going to erase everything, including the equation, so make sure you have the equation written down. Okay, example 1 is just showing you the work from the last problem. Actually, it says 46, but it actually should be 40, yeah, it should be 46. That's a mistake. Okay, so example 2. Now we have a different problem, and it says what is the average speed? Okay, so right away, I'm writing down my average speed equation. That's the total distance divide by the total time. And it says of a helicopter that flies 50 kilometers in 0.4 hours, and then 30 kilometers in 0.8 hours. Okay, so now notice we have two distances. We have the 50 kilometers and the 30 kilometers, and we have two times. So for d total, I'm going to add up all the distances. I'm going to do 50 plus 30, which is 80 kilometers. And then for t total, I'm going to add up my two times. Okay, so that's going to be 0.4 plus 0.8. That is 1.2 hours. And then with average speed, all I have to do is divide the total distance by the total time. So that's going to be 80 divided by 1.2. And so I'm going to put that into my calculator. 80 divided by 1.2 is 66, and then I'm going to round it to one decimal place so I don't have to write too much. 66.7 kilometers per hour. Okay, how do I know that the unit is kilometers per hour? Because I'm dividing kilometers over hours. Okay, so that's why it's kilometers per hour. Okay, so that is a typical example of an average speed problem where you have multiple distances and multiple times. Okay, so we're going to do one more example. Okay, so pause it there if you need to look at that some more. Okay. Now take a look at example 3. Okay, so it says a boy is walking to school from his house, stops by the store to get some candy. It takes him 0.55 hours to walk 1.6 miles to the store, 1.2 hours to walk 2.5 miles to school, and then another 0.62 hours to walk 1.3 miles to the park. Calculate the average speed of the boy in miles per hour. Okay, so pause it here and see if you can answer example 3 on your own. Okay, just do that calculation on your own and see what you get. Okay, so I'm going to use my average speed equation. That's d total divided by t total. Okay, for d total, I'm going to add up the distances. Now I have three distances. As I'm reading through, I'm looking for units to tell me what the different things are. Hours is time. Miles is distance. Hours is time. Miles is distance. Hours is time. Miles is distance. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3 different distances. So I'm going to add 1.6 plus 2.5 plus 1.3. And that is going to be my d total. I'm just adding up my three distances. And then for t total, I'm just going to add up my three times. And then divide. 0.55 plus 1.2 plus 0.62. Okay, so I added up all the miles, and then I added up all the hours, and now I'm just going to divide. Okay, so in my calculator, I type 1.6 plus 2.5 plus 1.3 divided by parentheses 0.55 plus 1.2 plus 0.62. Okay, and I get a number that is, I'm going to round that to 2.28, and that's going to be miles per hour. Okay, sometimes you'll see a question that says round your answer to one decimal place. This has two decimal places. So if I want to round this to one decimal place, I would round it up to 2.3 miles per hour. Okay, so always pay attention to what the question is asking you to find and make sure you have the correct number of decimal places. Okay, so that is how you do average speed calculations, pretty basic. As always, please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you guys in the next video.